Support for the Nocturnists comes from the California Medical Association.
At the Nocturnists, we are careful to ensure that all stories comply with healthcare privacy laws. Details may have been changed to ensure patient confidentiality. All views expressed are those of the person speaking and not their employer.
This is the Nocturnists. I'm Emily Silverman. Today, I'm joined by Sarah Auna, a birth doula, educator, and poet. Sarah has attended nearly 500 births at homes, hospitals, and freestanding birth centers. In 2024, she shared her story on stage at Intersections, a live event produced by the Center for the Art of Medicine in Minneapolis. As you'll hear, Sarah's story comes accompanied by the song Lioness, performed by Rachel Kurtz. In my conversation with Sarah, we talk about the art and science of doula work, why presence itself can actually change birth outcomes, how fear, control, and surrender play out in the birthing room, and of course, the story behind the song Lioness. Before we begin, take a listen to Sarah's story from Minneapolis.
It's a Saturday. I've got plans, but I'm on call. You know how it goes. Those plans are done. I'm on my way to a birth. I drive to St. Paul, up over the High Bridge, over the Mississippi, into a small residential neighborhood. There's a small brick building, very inconspicuous. You think maybe there's a person who's done taxes for other people for 30 years in that building. But what's actually happening inside those walls is the most wonderful, ordinary miracle, hundreds of times a year. I'm a birth doula. I'm at a freestanding birth center, and I park in the back. I've spent hundreds of hours at this birth center. As I walk in, there's a lobby. Folks are waiting to be seen for their regular prenatal care. But that's not where I'm headed. I'm actually headed to the right, down a dimly lit hall, where there are some sounds coming from the end of the hall. I wait at the edge of the door in the hallway for the sounds to subside and then knock softly. It's Sarah, can I come in? I hear something that sounds a little bit like a sigh and a yes, and I know it's okay for me to come in. In the room, it looks a little bit like a hotel room. There's a plush bed. There's a nice standing shower. There's a hard-plumbed tub in the corner. It also looks a little bit like a clinic. It also looks a little bit like someone's bedroom. In these freestanding birth centers, which are often associated near hospitals, but not explicitly associated with hospitals, certified nurse midwives are helping people give birth vaginally. It's all the kind of birth they do, and they do it really well. In the middle of the room are standing Katie and Jason. They weren't able to join us here tonight, but they did give me permission to use their names in this story. They're doing something that looks a little bit like a slow dance. Her arms are wrapped around his neck, his by her hips. They're swaying. And I know we're well into labor because she can't lift her head to meet my gaze. But I know that she's happy that I'm there. I place my hand on her lower back, soothe her with words, with kind touch, and tell her what an exceptional job she's doing. You see, Katie has been in labor for quite some time. Early that morning, her water let go. And instead of rushing into the birth center, her midwives decided it was okay for her to stay home for a while as long as she was still feeling the baby kick regularly. And so she and Jason decided to go for a walk in the cover of early morning before the neighbors started looking out the window being like, why is that lady hunched over in the road? We had decided ahead of time what Katie could do to distract herself in those early labor times, and she had decided on hand-making cinnamon rolls from scratch. Now, I don't know what happened to those cinnamon rolls. Either they were made and baked or abandoned mid-progress, but when I got to them, there were no cinnamon rolls in sight, nor could Katie maybe even think about what a cinnamon roll was. You know, everything I've described to you so far is by design. Oxytocin is the hormone that is responsible for helping people have a efficient labor. It's a poetic hormone, you see. It's also the hormone that allows us to feel safe and secure and attached and loved. And so the cinnamon rolls and the walk and the comfy bed, all of this is by design. Also by design is what I've described up until this point. Yes, the sphincter law. Humans have lots of sphincters in their bodies. Their eyes open and dilate or contract based on what they're perceiving around the room that they're in. Their esophagus, their mouth, anus, cervix, and they all talk to each other with this walkie-talkie style system. It's like this. Anus here, guys. We never met any of these people before. The lights are really bright out here, and we're not quite sure about this place. I think we should shut it all down. High and tight, high and tight. Roger that, anus. Now, on the other side, it can work in the opposite. Hey guys, cervix. Everybody's looking really good tonight. They came dressed to impress. The oxytocin is flowing. We've seen most of these people before. It feels good in here. Everybody, open the windows, open the doors. Let's do this thing. Roger that, cervix. So this is essentially the scene that I come upon. This is a very common scene to come upon at a freestanding birth center. And it's working. The oxytocin is flowing, and the tub is half full because she's already starting to sound like she's grunting. And so we assume that the pushing phase is going to go as well as the rest of it has gone. Katie gets into the tub. We don't tell her what to do. She just moves with the water and moves with her own intuition. And 1 hour of pushing turns into 2, and 2 turns into 3, and we've refreshed the water as many times as we can. It is stale in this room. The water's murky. The fresh fruit that we've put out is now warm. Sphincters are starting to close, you guys. So I do what I can to help compassionately steer the birth in the direction that we hope that it can go. And I use one of my very best doula tools. I intervene and I say, you should go sit on the dilation station, also known as the toilet. It's a simple intervention, but it is an effective one. It's a supported squat, and we have some experience releasing in there, am I right? It's also private. So she and Jason get out of the tub. It's a journey of 10 paces, but when you got a baby, you've been 3 hours into pushing. It is a journey to get into that bathroom. They slide the pocket door shut. And because we do not want to invite fear, who's waiting just outside in the hall, into this room, we wait until the door slides about 90% closed before the midwives and I exchange some looks. What are we going to do? Everybody's vitals are great. Why isn't this baby coming? We give it some time. We don't go in the bathroom. We let her cry. We start to refresh the room. I throw that dank plate of fruit out, top up all the waters. The nurses bring a little step stool and they start to hook pink silk sheets to a carabiner that is screwed into the ceiling in a beam, and the sheets pool on the ground, and underneath the sheets they set a squatting stool, which is like a toilet seat with legs on it. And as we give Katie the time that she needs, the privacy she needs, we hear a sob that transmutes into a moan, which then turns into a growl, and the air electrifies. Because if you spend time with people who give birth, you know that when we're close, the air changes. The midwives put their headlamps on. The LED candles are still going. Now, while what I'm explaining to you is not extraordinary in this setting, this birth at this place with this person was extraordinary because of who Katie is and who she comes from. You see, just down the hill, her mother, who's a labor and delivery charge nurse, is waiting. Her two sisters, who are labor and delivery charge nurses, are waiting. The only birth that they have interacted with are the ones that either voluntarily or must transfer down to the hospital. But Katie also works at this hospital. She's the chaplain on the labor and delivery unit. And the only birth that she has interfaced with up until this point is with families who are grieving babies that have come too small, too fast, too soon, not fast enough. That is a lot of closed sphincters to overcome, you guys. So many. So in this moment, when we hear the cervix at full dilation, when we hear that sob turn into that moan, turn into that growl, and Katie pulls that pocket door back, her curls have fallen out, tumbles of brown and gray ringlets. There's not a scrap of clothing in sight. She stalks up to these silks. And she runs them between her hands as she gets as low as she can. She's almost touching the birth stool, but before she sits down, another huge wave comes, and she puts the pink silks in her mouth, and she pulls, and she bites, and she gets as low as she can. And her midwife's cheeks hit the floor, and the headlamps are looking for a crown. And her husband is there, like scaffolding with his arms around her. And her doula is there witnessing this incredible everyday miracle. And then Jasper is there, all 10 pounds of him. Two weeks later, we're together at their home. It's Katie and Jason and Jasper, and Grandma is there too. Charge nurse Grandma is there, and she's taking care of the baby. And in this 2-week session, I teach families how to wear their babies, especially if they are 10 pounds babies. And I do a mental health screening with them, both parents. And I do a storytelling session with them, and I help them process not just what order did things happen in, but like, why did it happen that way, and how did they feel about it, and maybe what were their parallel experiences in the same room, but very different. And I also ask to reflect some of my own witnessing back to them. And so I say, can I tell you what I saw when you came out of that bathroom? And she says, of course. And I said, honey, when you stalked up to that birthing throne, and your hair was down, and the sound of your throat let us know that the baby was there, you were a lioness. You were a lioness. And her eyes dilate. And unblinkingly, she looks at me and she said, did I tell you the song I listened to every single day in the parking ramp on my lunch break at work to overcome the fear of my family and my profession and my own self to give birth to this baby outside of the hospital? And she walks past me and she pulls a CD out and she runs her fingers down to song 4. Lioness. It's a couple years later. It's an entire pandemic later. For me, it's a divorce later. And I am on my way to what I think is a business meeting. You see, I'd picked up this postcard a couple years before for a postpartum care worker, and I thought, I've been in this business for 10 years, almost 500 babies at this point. How do I not know these people? And so I'd been trying to get in touch with these folks for many, many months, but all the things I just mentioned had been getting in the way. Finally, the business happy hour is here. I make my way into the bar. I sit down. I'm too heartbroken to be on a date. I'm also too unarmored to tell anything except the truth about myself. And so this woman and I sit and we talk and we notice our intersections. We are both late in life bloomers. We are queer women. We're single moms. We have children that are teenagers and almost teenagers. We help people give birth and take care of them after birth. I'm a poet. She's a musician, and she mentions this. And I'm thinking, you're not a musician. You're a doula. That's what the postcard said anyhow. And we start to talk about creativity. I say, have you ever written something and you think that it's about somebody else, but it's really about you? And she said, yeah, as a matter of fact. I wrote this song, and it says, there's nothing as dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as powerful as a woman who knows herself. She said the song's called Lioness. I thought, oh God, I'm on a date and I'm in trouble because I am already in love. And that word, lioness, made it safe for me to proceed on my journey of authenticity and love again and relationship. Rachel and I got to spend 2 beautiful years together. We broke up recently. But the great news is, guys, we're back together. She's here to sing you the song tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Rachel Kurtz.
There's nothing as dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as powerful as a woman who knows herself.
I am sitting here with birth doula Sarah Auna. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So Sarah, I believe you are the first birth doula on our conversation series. So congratulations. And I was hoping you could start us off by telling us what inspired you to become a birth doula.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those stories where birth doulaship found me. I didn't really go looking for it. I would say my kind of origin story around being a birth doula is that I was giving birth to my second child, and it was a Tuesday in 2012. And I was in the birth tub. I had a midwife who had become certified in water birth, and I myself didn't have a doula. I didn't know a lot about it, but I just had a lot of mentorship from her. And it was Tuesday at 11 o'clock in the morning. I remember getting into a shower to labor and help kind of ease some of the sensations, the contractions. And from outside of the bathroom door, Deb, my midwife, kind of popped her head in and said, hey, we talked about having a water birth. If you're interested, I think it's probably time we make a move towards that. And at the time, this was 12 years ago, the water birth tub was on the other side of the labor and delivery unit. So I did this thriller walk is what I say, this thriller walk / crawl / shuffle across the labor and delivery unit. And as I got into the birth tub, I just remember looking around the tub, and there was a nurse there named Jessica, who I get to work with now. In fact, now 500 births later, was at the last birth I was at. My midwife, Deb, was there, and my husband at the time was there. And I just remember thinking to myself, if I were at work right now, and at the time I was a producer at a national television broadcasting station, I thought, what would I be doing right now? I think I'd be mindlessly answering some really numbing emails. I'd be scrolling through pretty salacious headlines. And I thought in that moment, I would like to do something meaningful like this. And I didn't have a lot of cognizant or clear thoughts at that point, that deeply in labor, but I just remember saying, I would like to have a job like this. And I didn't even know what a doula was at that moment. And then Eddie was born about 20 minutes later. And I think because I had that wish in the thinness of the veil of that moment, I remember feeling like I looked up at the sky, and even though there was a window in the room, it was like the light was coming from the ceiling, not from the window behind me. And the water kind of came down, or the light came down onto the water. And then the water took the light and it transformed it into a baby that came out of my body in the bathtub. And I just think that that wish was kind of born in that moment too. And, that was 12 years ago now.
Wow, what an ethereal description of that scene. What does it take to become a birth doula? Like, what is the training process like?
Yeah. So being a birth doula is akin to an apprenticeship. I like to think about doulas as community members, like a carpenter or a tattoo artist, people that need to be really good at their craft, but don't necessarily need to have the same certifications or letters behind their name that somebody else might need to have. And so in the state of Minnesota, and it's different from state to state in America, but in the state of Minnesota, it requires a workshop, really, which is offered through lots of different training organizations. It's anywhere from 40 to 100 hours of studying about the physiological normality of birth, required readings and writings, depending on which type of training organization you choose. They help you learn about social justice and birth justice, and how different types of bodies are treated differently in different types of birthing settings. And they also teach you about some of the variations of normal or the interventions that may or may not be required. But what I'd really like to illuminate about becoming a birth doula is that the first thing that's required is your willingness to be there. And what we've learned from a lot of the studies around birth doula care is that the presence of the person there who's just in service and attentiveness to the person giving birth and them alone actually creates safer, shorter, more pleasurable births. So there's lots of certifications, there's lots of fun, interesting things you can learn about physiology and the anatomy of the pelvis and contraindications and what certain medications do or how they can benefit or risk the situation. But the beauty of the community role of being a doula is that your presence is what's mattering the most in creating a better outcome for everybody, the baby, the person giving birth, and if they have a partner, the partner as well.
I know that in addition to being present at the birth, doulas often work with people in the months and weeks leading up to the birth, and then sometimes even a bit in the postpartum period. So what is it like to be with someone along that arc? And what are some of the most common concerns or fears that expectant mothers have, and how do you help them navigate those?
So a birth doula's magic is in their continuity and in their individual care. Oftentimes I'm hired before somebody has even told their parents that they're pregnant yet. And other times I'm hired when somebody is 3 weeks away from their guest date and they say, oh shit, I should have hired somebody to help me through this. And so I meet people on the path, wherever it is that they realize that they could use some education, some emotional support, some relational support. So what I find is that most folks, whether they hire me 3 weeks out of their guest date or 9 months, 8.5 months out from their guest date, their fear is an inherited narrative that American culture has given them, that birth is risky and birth is scary and birth is hard and birth hurts and that you won't be listened to and that birth is something that's going to happen to you, not through you. And a birth doula is here to help somebody reorient the narrative to that birth is something that happens through you, through your values, through your wishes, through your anatomy, and not something that happens to you.
So what does that look like? I'm curious. I mean, obviously, without getting into private details of your clients, but what are some common scenarios that come up and how do you think about those scenarios?
What's so neat about being a birth doula is that you get to see and witness and experience firsthand both the individual nature of each person, but then also the very common humanity that we all share. And so it's that macro experience of humans give birth. And then there's that micro expression of every single person's lived experience, medical decision-making information or values, priorities, upbringings, community, culture, income, all of those things then create a very granular experience, right? So my first step in helping a family is always helping them identify their values when it comes to medical decision-making and understanding, am I more of a naturalist or am I more of a technologist? Am I more of a minimalist? Am I more of a maximalist? Do I believe that these decisions I'm making are going to have the outcome that I hope? Or even if I do the work, am I just naturally more of a doubter? And I just help people find themselves in this scale called the Groupman spectrum. And then that helps folks decide, where should I be giving birth and how can I pick a provider that's going to align with my maximalist values or my naturalist values. And so that's really the entry point of working with families and helping them dispel some of their fear. Because I think the biggest fear about birth is a lack of control, a lack of being heard, just becoming a number in a medical system or an institution. And that's that macro, micro experience. Again, as a doula, you get to witness the intimacy of the moment. This is usually one of the most important top 3 days of a person's entire existence, giving birth. And most people give birth in hospitals, which means they are room 304 and they are patient number 5 of the day and they are patient number 500 of the whatever, you know what I mean? So just like witnessing care providers' ability to meet that family in their individual moment, but also understanding like there's efficiencies and there's things that need to run smoothly and there's protocols and there's safety things that need to be attended to at the same time as making sure that people's most intimate day is tended to well.
You mentioned something called the Groupman spectrum. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Groupman spectrum, GROOPMAN, is a medical decision-making tool that was adapted by childbirth educators to help people decide, should I give birth with a midwife in a hospital, a midwife out of the hospital at, say, a freestanding birth center, or in-home? Or should I give birth with an OBGYN in a hospital? And if I do that, do I want to have a vaginal birth? Or would I like to talk about having a planned cesarean birth, as I call it, surgical birth? And so when we find ourselves as patients along the Groupman spectrum and we get our results about what type of maximalist or naturalist we are or technologists we are, then we can lay the model of care on top of that. And people can say, my values are going to be most aligned with, if I'm in the middle of the spectrum, then if I'm with a midwife in a hospital, usually I'm going to have my highest rate of satisfaction because that person's practice aligns best with my values. And the same as it goes on either side.
As you may know, I'm a doctor, and a lot of my friends are doctors. And I feel like a lot of us have approached birth much more through the medical lens, just because that's the lens that we grew up with. And I'm wondering if you ever get clients. I mean, I imagine you attract clients who are a little crunchier, and, obviously those are the people who are more likely to reach for a doula as a resource. But do you also get people like maybe me and my doctor friends who are more technicians and maximalists who like we're coming to you to kind of get some balance to our perspective? And what is it like working with that kind of a client versus maybe somebody who's, more, I'll just, do it at a birthing center and I maybe has less anxiety?
Yeah, that's such a great question. One of my most memorable and dearest clients was an in-hospital midwife herself. And she did hire me so that she can have some co-regulation around feeling like this is something I'm going to do in community. This is something I'm going to do with my colleagues. I'm safe. This is natural, and worked to kind of divorce herself from that worst case scenario thinking. And what I want to say about birth is that I think that no matter where you find yourself on that Groupman spectrum, where your body and nervous system determines is the safest place to give birth. And so if I'm working with somebody who's more of a maximalist or a technologist, and because their lived experience has shown them and has participated in helping some of these worst case scenario situations come back into health and safety, then your nervous system will always feel more comfortable giving birth at a hospital where you know that some of those plan A, B, Cs are literally waiting in the closet on the other side of the room. And that is what allows your body and your nervous system to give itself over to the surrender of giving birth. And so an individual's idea of what's safest becomes what's safest.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering how it's different for first-time mothers versus somebody who has maybe given birth before. Are most of your clients new to this, or do you ever have folks where it's their third or fourth and they're working with a doula?
Yeah, of course. So I would say a specialty of mine is helping somebody have a redemptive birth. And that doesn't mean that we run away from the hospital and we go find a yurt and we hire a unicorn to help. Like, that is the actual opposite of what I'm talking about. Oftentimes, a redemptive second or third time birth is helping somebody bravely walk back into a similar environment and help them learn how to ask for what they need, and help them to create relationship with their care providers in a way that they weren't able to the first time for a million different reasons. Labor is emotional. Labor is relational. It's physical. It's taxing for everybody involved, the care provider, the partner, the infant, the parent giving birth. And so a lot of times our frontal cortex by design goes offline, and we're not able to do that advocating or just simple asking for reassurance or clarifying information. I'm sure you've been in situations where you ask, does anybody have any questions? And you know that there's a list of 20 questions, but they can't access their verbal processing to ask the questions. So a doula is really here to help give them a framework to access those questions, access their values, ask for alternatives. And then, if a first-time family hires a birth doula, then they oftentimes feel satisfaction with their birth, even if they don't end up with a vaginal birth. Even if they end up with a surgical birth, they feel like I was heard, I had access to my voice, I wasn't left wondering if the decision was the right one, what's the evidence for what unfolded. They have a baby surgically and they're still like, hell yeah, that was an amazing journey. So helping a second or third time family come back to that.
You told this story of giving birth yourself and having this wish, and then the baby coming out and giving birth to the baby, but also giving birth to this wish, which became part of your career as a birth doula. And I think you mentioned you've participated in over 500 births now. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So going from your own N of one or your experience to having been present at over 500 of these events, like, what have you learned? That's a lot of data. That's a lot of time points. That's a lot of ends. And I'm wondering, like, what are some patterns that you've picked up or things you've noticed or revelations you've had about the birthing process?
That's such a beautiful question. So much of what I've learned has helped me navigate my life outside of being a birth doula. And I would say one of the things I've learned the most about is my own nervous system regulation and people pleasing. These are the two things that have been the greatest lessons for me. And I say nervous system regulation because I think a person can prepare for their birth by buying all the essential oils they can and finding a care provider that feels like they met on Match.com and it's just like a perfect fit. And they can buy all the things that the blog post says that they should buy. They can even hire a doula. But if they're not tending to their own mental health and they're not tending to their own narratives about themselves, their own abilities, the trust that they have in any partner that might be present, the trust that they have in their care providers, I really think that a responsive nervous system is the thing that creates better birth outcomes. And so just really finding people and an atmosphere that does that co-regulation with you, that does that mirror imaging with you, and can help you feel safe no matter what the circumstance is that's unfolding. So that's the most important thing.
How do you help people navigate doctors in the medical system? Because coming from the medical side, there's always this stereotype of, the person who comes in with the birth plan that's 5 pages long and they want, these rose petals, and it's a stereotype, it's a joke. And, you want people to come into the health system empowered with access to their voice and access to their agency and knowing what their values are. But I imagine there's some stigma or, having to kind of navigate the way that people are perceived by doctors and nurses in the hospital. So how do you balance that and how do you work with that? Because that is something, for me personally, I didn't have a lot of demands, but even the small demands that I had, I definitely was conscious of the fact that I didn't want to be perceived a certain way and, things of that nature.
Yeah, that is that perfect segue into the kind of people-pleasing nature that folks who are socialized as female, which most birth givers do identify as, that there is this opportunity to just be very centered in the care and have your voice and kind of the magical creation and science and biology of your body kind of take center stage, but it's taking place in a setting that doesn't necessarily center that. And so there's this beautiful opportunity for the person giving birth to simply start by asking for what they need. And it can be to go slower. Can you say that again? Do you have a handout on that? Or, just these very simple gestures that can grow into really large confidence pieces as they embark on their parenthood journey. I also want to say that one of the things that I've learned through my practice is that the people that are giving birth have their nervous system. And then the providers that come in have their nervous system. And we have to find that beautiful space of relational and scientific magic that helps everybody feel safe, that helps the care provider feel like this is not a combative person that has an absolutely unrealistic expectation. And also that the person that is giving birth feels like the person walking through the room can be a co-expert with them and is there to create the safest outcome. And what I want to say about safest outcome is there's this saying in birth that we want a healthy mom and a healthy baby. Have you heard this? Healthy mom, healthy baby. That's the goal. What I want to introduce here is that it's not actually the goal. That is the foundation that we want to build this experience on. That's the non-negotiable. And then from there, through our relating to one another, through our communication, through our own nervous system regulation as providers and birth givers, we can create something that is very beautiful and does create confidence in birth in both the care provider and the person giving birth. And then this child comes and everybody moves away from that experience with more confidence for whatever waits for them in life on the other side of that birth.
I want to talk about the story that you told on stage. So this was a very special birth that you were a part of. The person giving birth is somebody who was deeply connected to the L&D community. Her name was Katie. Tell us about Katie's birth and why that stood out as the story you wanted to tell.
So I just wanted to help that family pour honey over their entire experience of labor and delivery, because they were all so entrenched in some of the worst case scenarios when it comes to this. And I wanted to help them experience something that felt joyful. Not just the people that were giving birth, but the mother who was the charge nurse at the hospital nearby where the birth center transfers went to, and her sisters who also worked in that same space. My goal for that birth was to help everybody walk away from the experience feeling like birth is not only hard, birth is not only scary, because it is absolutely those things. Birth is actually dangerous sometimes, but it's also joyful at the same time. And so just did a lot of work with that particular family about doing a self-assessment. What are the stories I'm telling myself about birth? What are the stories that I grew up with? What does my nervous system perceive birth to be? Something that's safe or something that is a ticking time bomb? And I think that's why it was so profoundly pivotal in my career, is because I got to see the magic of believing in physiological birth heal like a domino effect many, many family members. And you know what a doula does? A doula brings a context of hope to a situation that sometimes feels overwhelming or scary. A doula is here to bring a context of hope.
In addition to being a doula, you're a poet. And at the end of your story, you talk about this partner of yours who's a musician, and then she gives a rousing performance of the song Lioness. So as we wind this to a close, I just wanted to ask, how do things like poetry and music intersect with your work as a doula?
Being a birth doula and witnessing such an incredible full spectrum of the human experience, witnessing folks that are in a space of loss, of grief, of sorrow, of absolute unspeakable sadness and shock, and also getting to witness people that are in an unspeakable space of ecstasy, joy, elation, profound glory, has just given me a lens that I get to look at every single human walking around and say, like, every single human that I see in my own life, that I see on TV, that I see in positions of leadership, that I see walking in my neighborhood, all of those people passed through that incredible scope of the human experience to get here. And so it just makes the sun shine a little bit brighter. It just makes pretty things a little prettier and touching things a little bit more touching. And I just can't help but understand physically the preciousness of each person walking around.
And what was it like to have that musical performance in the theater? I wasn't personally there, but I heard the audio and would love for you to just speak about what it was like in the room.
Yeah. So what's so exciting about that story is that you think that the reveal is that Katie is a chaplain and that her entire family works in L&D. And then later you think that the reveal is that Jasper is a 10-pound baby who his mom growled out. But then the kind of personal reveal is that this incredible song that empowered Katie also later emboldened me to do a hard personal thing. And so the climax of the story kind of being this really intimate tie into my own personal life. And then one more reveal, which is that this person, Rachel, is going to sing this actual song for you right now. There was an electricity in the room. I think that there was like an elation and a celebration. And then I also think we recruited people to the message of the song, which is there's nothing as dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as powerful as a woman who knows herself. And that message isn't specific and only reserved for the person that's giving birth. That's just a song of empowerment for every single person involved in any incredible climb that they're on.
Well, I think that's a great place to end, Sarah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
What I want to share is that a birth doula is for anybody giving birth, no matter their setting, because a birth doula is for the person giving birth. And so don't hesitate to reach out in your own community and find that person who's going to reflect back that lioness to you, so that no matter the outcome, no matter how your baby needs to be born, you feel emboldened by the experience.
I have been speaking with the wonderful Sarah Auna. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story on the stage and for speaking with me today.
You're welcome, Emily. It was a pleasure.
There's nothing as dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as powerful, dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as powerful as a woman who knows herself. She stands up, her back held straight, a lioness in her gaze. Her pride is gathered round her thighs. Her daughter sees herself in her mama's eyes. Velvet tongue and upturned lip, her children clinging at her hip. She plays her songs as incantations, calling forth their own creations. Dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as powerful as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as dangerous. There's nothing as powerful as a woman who knows herself. Oh, she licks her chops, tastes the thunder, rain-soaked dreams and childhood wonder. Block pathways torn asunder. She's defeated but won't surrender. Tastes the fruit, kingdom branches. Lesson learned, her second chances. Prowess beckons, invites romances. They are clutching at her haunches. Is her daughter the diamond, not proof of her status? Her young son she adores with such hope and such passion. They are glorious. They are glorious. Her children glorious. They are glorious. Dangerous. Oh, there's nothing as powerful as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as dangerous as a woman who knows herself. There's nothing as powerful.
This episode of The Nocturnist was produced by me and producer and head of story development, Molly Rose Williams. Our executive producer is Allie Block, and Ashley Pettit is our program director. Original theme music was composed by Yosef Monroe, and additional music comes from Blue Dot Sessions. The Nocturnist is made possible by the California Medical Association, a physician-led organization that works to ensure the doctor-patient relationship remains at the center of medicine. To learn more about the CMA, visit cmadocs.org. This episode of the Nocturnist Conversations is sponsored by the Physicians Foundation, which supports physician well-being, practice sustainability, and leadership in delivering high-quality, cost-efficient care. The Nocturnist is also made possible by donations from listeners like you. In fact, we recently moved over to Substack, which makes it easier than ever to support our work directly. By joining us with a donation of $2, $5, or $10 a month, you'll become an essential part of our creative community. I'm your host, Emily Silverman. See you next week.